ყველაფერი გავაკეთე, რაც შემეწვა.
ესე უცებ ბავშვი როგორ მოგვდა.
ნინა,
და ამ ყველაფრის მერე სამწყობოს რა მომაზე ფიქრე?
პროფესიის გარდა არაფერი მოქვს დასაკარგე.
Hi, I'm Dea Kulumbegashvili, the director of April. I'm in New York at IndieWire studio, and we're about to talk about my film on the Toolkit podcast.
You're the first filmmaker from your country to have a film at Cannes, and I'm curious, your path to becoming a filmmaker. There haven't been a lot of filmmakers, at least, that have broken onto the international scene from where you live.
Thank you. Actually, we were talking about this also like while we were on the way here. Actually, Georgia has very like incredible history and heritage of filmmaking, but it was like in Soviet times, and Georgia was part of Soviet Union, and sadly, Georgian cinema was perceived as Soviet cinema. So the only Soviet director who ever won Golden Palm in Cannes is a Georgian director, Mikhail Galatozov, actually.
Oh, okay, of course, yeah.
Because his real last name is Galatozishvili, which he was not allowed, obviously, to have his last name like used that way because of the Soviet censorship at the same time. But then like there was a huge gap, which like because of the Civil War, which followed the collapse of the Soviet Union. And it's true that since then we were really trying to rebuild the industry, or we really want to create a possibility for making films, but it's really difficult because again we were talking about this, when you're the neighbor of Russia, it's like it's difficult to have some sort of like a sense of stability in the country, because like we can't really even create co-productions because it's difficult to foresee like what's gonna happen in the like next year, and like it's politically very like unstable. My path to filmmaking was also like a bit convoluted because of the Civil War again, because when I was growing up, we never had electricity, and we almost never watched cinema, of course, because I mean it's like I was growing up with candlelights basically, and we would have like occasionally like maybe once a week for an hour electricity, and we would just like jump like really like want to watch like something on TV, and sometimes there would be films or like parts of the films that I could see. And it's kind of famous story already maybe among my friends that I used to like once I watched Rambo, like literally it's like with Sylvester Stallone, and I have never seen anything like that before, because that like
It would seem very surreal with no context.
I know it, and it was like something like I could not understand like where was he running, like what was really happening, because I didn't know like how the film began. And the next morning, like we used to go to, it was called like a bread line. You needed to stand in a line for bread, because every person was allowed to buy one bread only. So our parents would take all of us, like, and there was like many children at 6 a.m. always.
No picking it up for the whole family. You got to bring
we needed to really like, because there was nothing else mostly. And the next morning, all the kids in this line were just like so fascinating, and everybody wanted to know like what was this film about. And I remember that I started to make it up somehow, how the film started and then how it would end. And I do believe that somehow that made me initially to understand what does it mean to tell a story, maybe. Because like, no one knows for sure how the film is going to end, but it just depends on you somehow as a director to go with your own imagination, because I never really knew there was such thing as a structure, obviously, at that point, or like formal part of filmmaking. And then like it took me many years until I understood that like I could make films myself, even though like when we started to have electricity later, like I became a cinephile, but cinema was something like so magical that I.
How old are you at this point when you get to really start to watch?
17, maybe 18, and I watched everything. My father was a huge cinephile, and when we were able to start to watch films, he would bring home like Mama Roma, like there was like this VHS like cassettes, like and we would just watch films which were fascinating for me, like Vittorio like Sica's Bicycle Thieves, and he used to cry. And really we would just sit there crying, like but then it was too much of unachievable thing, something I would never imagine. But then gradually I was brought into cinema by my friends, and who told me that maybe I should try and do something on my own.
So you just started making films yourself?
I went to Columbia University for MFA program.
Here?
Yes. Until then, I was not making films. I was writing, and I thought I would be a novelist, but it was always some sort of very obsessive and like I would never be able to finish a novel. I would just start and then like write it for a few years, and everybody was always like trying to pursue me to finish it. So I was like, somehow it was a very self-obsessed, some sort of process for me. And then cinema just changed it, because I guess cinema is a collaborative process, and I guess for me it's necessary to work with other people.
And this film, the inspiration came, if I'm understanding correctly, casting for your previous film. Yes. and visiting one of these a village similar to where your character Nina travels to provide medical care.
Yes, when I was casting Beginning, my first feature, I was already in this region, and I met this wonderful children who were in the film, and then they brought in their mothers and sisters. So basically, the way we used to make films, at least like in this region, because like my sister is a wonderful like cook, like, and she used to do catering for entire team every day, and feed us. And then like she used to have this like separate table for kids of the area, and then we just invited them to come and like have sweets or whatever, like to eat with us every day. Also because I wanted children to start to see how films are made also on the days when it was okay for them to be there with us. And they would always bring their mothers, because I wanted them to be with their parents. And then I started to talk to these women, and we started to become friends, and they somehow brought this I honestly think that they brought this film to me.
Are you seeing essentially like what Nina is seeing when she comes to there? What are you specifically seeing that year?
Well, it's like, I guess it's even more. It's like there are certain things which I was not able to put in film because of the concerns of like safety of the women who were helping me. But I at least wanted to capture or somehow to grasp this like feeling or the condition that is the life of the women there, and what would Nina see and how she feels because of it, because of what she sees, because it's somehow overwhelmingly painful on some of the days to be in this place. And it's even more painful when you understand that children live in those houses and they do see really horrible things really often, and then you try to call children's services and they can't really help much. And then I started to understand that the life of this doctor would be, she's not only providing care, maybe, but that also like she just tries to be there as well. And then I don't know how much of a difference she can make.
I saw in another interview the way you had described it was that you're seeing a cycle almost, a lack of education and people having lots of kids, and then the kids growing up in household. It seems as if Nina not only is trying to provide care, but it sounds like even you were trying to teach filmmaking. There's an effort to maybe try and break that cycle to a degree.
Well, yes, because like first of all, I grew up in a family of educator. Like my grandmother.
Did you grow up in a town like this, or did you grow up in?
I grew up literally where I made Beginning, my first feature. It's like a very small town in the center of these villages, like very small. It's like 13 or 12,000 people, and I grew up there. But then there's the villages surrounding the town, and the hospital is inside the town. And then
the hospital where you filmed,
yes,
okay.
Yeah. And this is where I lived till I was 17. And my grandmother spent her entire life there because she used to teach children how to read and write. But because she saw that it was impossible for the children to understand the importance of education because often their parents were illiterate, she would go the second half of the day from one house to another, also educating parents and teaching them. And often those would be women, because men had a bit more education because they could go until 8th grade, for example, to school. But many women would go either to 4th or 6th grade only, or mostly 4th, I would say, in the generation of mothers. And it was like a really big problem, like the lack of just really basic skills we need to have, like some sort of like, I don't know, independent life or the possibility of a choice at least. And obviously then there is this like vicious circle almost, because now I know, and some of these people are also acting in my film, mothers who cannot read and write, and then their children who are 19, 20, who like, can't read either. And I don't know how their children would be also. A lot of like this circle of violence that also happens in the rural Georgia, not only in this place, sadly. Part of it is really lack of education, because these people don't even leave ever, and they don't want to see different kind of life, and there is a lot of fear, and they're very scared of everything which is unknown, and there is like poverty and a lot of hardship.
I assume a lot of these people are first-time performers, people who live in these towns. You do a really good job an amazing job of kind of capturing their fear. Considering you're working with these first-time performers, often portraying, I imagine, some aspects of their life, what was it like as a filmmaker? Because I mean, I see the fear that these women have just going, seeing Nino. Is there a parallel here of what it's like as a filmmaker to Nina? I mean, because you're telling these stories, and I'm just wondering what the response was with that.
In these towns and in the villages, strangely enough, these women were very collaborative, and they made this film possible, because I guess what they really need maybe is somebody who makes them feel, or to like, they need to see that it's important, that they're like struggling, but they don't give up, and they try to be good mothers, and they try to teach their children how to love and something beautiful that is in life. It's like they really want to be heard. And because like I grew up there, and many of them know me since I was a child, because I used to
She's
go
back.
because I used to go to the
Yeah.
houses with my grandmother a lot, because I was growing up with my grandmother, and often she could not leave me at home, and I would go also when she needed to work, and I would play.
What'd your grandmother do?
She was a teacher.
She was a teacher.
Yeah. I used to kind of do my homework
Mm-hmm.
sometimes at her work like place also. I think what's the fear where I could really feel it is that like there is a lot of shame usually associated with the victims of any abuse, because they don't want to tell you specifically what's happening to them, because they're also somehow ashamed, and there is a lot of stigma, and especially in places like this, because women have this like really strange question about like, do they deserve it, or why are things happening to them? And I guess like sometimes it just like, you need to be delicate. Like I don't ask questions often. I just wait for them to want to say something, and it's a process. Like it took me a year to be there. Like in this area I was like for more than 3 years while I was working, but in the clinic, for example, I was for a year, and things just started to happen after a few months. Like they don't happen right away.
It also seems like, what you're portraying is how often they're isolated in their fear. And it sounds like maybe in the process of filmmaking, there's something in the collective, them getting together. I want to make sure I have this right, because now we're going to talk about the hospital world. Is this right? You spent a year in the hospital?
Yes, we did. Not me. I was not alone. Also, like the actress, like Ia, she was there almost every week.
For For a year.
Yes, and also cinematographer, he spent a lot of time there as well, because you can't just go there and like, also like I don't believe in just like treating something as a location. So I write a story and then I come here and this is my location. I don't know how to make films that way.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more like, okay, this is a world of the film. And now I need to go there to learn as much as I can, at least, about the world. Because otherwise, I don't know how to film in there or who to film, honestly. And again, we were really welcomed little by little. It's like in a hospital, especially, they don't just open the doors for you and say that, okay, go around. But again, like it's a process of
Keep showing up. They see your face.
Yes,
They start to know
yeah.
you. And is that also how you were able to film a birth?
Yes, I did attend several women giving birth. I was there with the actress also, but it doesn't happen that like you just don't show up again, right? It's like you're in the clinic, you start to meet people, then somebody might allow you to witness, just allow us to stand at the window, which like you can just see through what's in the room. So again, like it's a process.
I'm curious because there are some longer takes, and your actress, who's wonderful, clearly had to learn the mechanics. Why was that important for you with this film? I mean, obviously her character, it's so much about, there's so many things going on with her character, but the mechanics of being a doctor, why was that so important for you to get right?
Because I think when I started to really get to know doctors, I understood that everything they do it as doctors somehow. Like the way they move, the way they sit, like what kind of like physical problems they might have, because they have like back issues usually because they stand a lot during the surgeries, and then how much attention they pay to the details. Like it's really important for me to understand for myself the mechanics even of the character. How would they function in their daily life? I don't know, like what's cinema? Like that, then it's like a very important question for me, because cinema is capturing a life of this woman for me, right? And then this particular film. And what's interesting part of it and what's not interesting, I don't know, because for me it's all interesting, and I just want to be able to grasp her regular daily routine, which consists of also being just a professional in what she does. And she needed to be really a professional in what she was doing.
There's a commitment to realism here. There is a grounded realism, but then there's things like some of these point of views. There's almost like I don't know what the word is. There's something that becomes almost physical. It's not just reality. I don't know what you're trying to get at, but it's very beautiful, and there seems to be a mode here of when we're in that point of view and when we're not in that point of view. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Thank you. I mean, for me, in general, cinema is the question of perception, and what is the reality and what is the perception, and the perception of whoever's looking. That's also very important. And then, like, I always think that like there is a space which you will see on screen. There is a space which is off screen, and I hope that it also opens up the space beyond also. And then like it is between a viewer and the film, and like I don't know, is it hyper real? Is it like, for me, like it's both real, by the way. Creature is real for me as well, but for me it's like the question of reality is very interesting. Or like in general, like what is cinema, right? I mean, is it something that accumulates as you watch the film? Because I really don't know. But the perception is really the most something which I really work with on while we shoot. And sometimes like it's very instinctual, because I do follow one point of view, and then suddenly you just pan the camera and something else starts to happen, and I'm always like, okay, no, this I really don't know what it is in that moment maybe, but then I start to understand that this is my film, like, which starts to happen after this like mechanical movement of a camera, because cinema happens through camera also, because it doesn't exist without one. I think that the creature makes the reality even more real somehow.
I don't want to put a meaning behind the creature because you don't do it, but it's I saw somewhere it becomes a transitional moment between the worlds where she's not fully herself. There's something about this character with connectiveness, right?
Yeah.
It's such this empathetic character who is like giving so much of herself. And then there's an element of like her ability to connect. And I'm just wondering how much, that idea of another space for the creature, how that connects to, because the creature is Nina, right? I got that right. Yeah, right.
Yes.
So what is it about having that other dimension there that is something about this profile of this narrative about this woman?
Well, I think that there were days when I was in these villages and I could feel that really what I would see and what was happening there would become almost unbearable for me to handle. And I started to think that, okay, if Nina is here for so many years and she comes to the villages every week several times, like what does it do to her? All the misery and all the pain that she witnessed and she was maybe part of also while those things happened. How does it affect her? And I started to think that maybe like perhaps like there is a moment when empathy becomes almost like unbearable, and there is a moment for her when she needs to get out from this experience. But I did not know what getting out from the experience really means, because I only know in a way still human experience. I never find it possible for my characters to be just dying somehow. By the way, when I was making my first feature, I had the same question, like if the character just dies, what does it mean? And I don't think it's getting out of a human experience. It's in a way really staying in it. And then I started to really see Nina being in this world between some worlds. I can't explain it, honestly. And it's like I've been asked this question by producers, obviously, many times in the process, but I was really never able to rationalize, because like also like I really love in a way that cinema is the medium that allows us to get to irrational and not to seek answers, but maybe ask more questions even.
And one thing I love about how you go to that place is your use of sound. I wonder if you talk about that in context of what you were just talking about, because the use of sound, I think, is tied to some of the more expressionistic uses of sound is tied to the creature and the point of view, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, I think so, maybe more, because like for me, sound, especially in this film, was something which heightened maybe the very physical and very tangible experience of the film. And I really wanted the audience to go through the film and for the reality to come really close, almost like touching our face. And then like also, what is sound? I mean, I think that like the moment you start to think about, okay, what do I hear? You start to hear things like more than before you would ask that question. But to create the world, also like for me, it's still a subjective experience of the director in this, like anyone who would be doing it. I mean, the sound for me is something which I wish I had always like much more time. I work so much that at some point it becomes really unbearable for producers. Like especially the sound is always like the weak part, because I can never finish. Because it's a very tactile, like, and I mean, you need to be in the studio and you really need to try and hear. And because on set, I make notes for myself always, like what was something which I heard, because other than recording everything, I'm also like writing some sort of a experiential journal, or try to have it at least for scenes.
What do you do with that? What's that? Is that?
It's important for me because what I hear there, when we record it, you don't really pay attention to exactly what I heard while I was there, because when I am on set and I'm usually next to the camera, I'm really like connected with what's happening in front of the camera. And I think instinctually I start to hear what's really related to the image also, or to the experience of the scene. And I want usually to preserve this memory. Often I do remember because I don't have that many shots in the film, so it's easy to remember. But I still prefer to have it written always.
Wanted to ask about that one evening driving shot where she picks up I guess, a hitchhiker.
That scene, I mean, I wrote it exactly actually the way we filmed it later. And I think that somehow I wanted again to work with this who's watching, the question of perception, because somehow, despite it being a man who she, like, it's a clearly specific man who she picks up, but then I also wanted somehow audience in that moment to be put in the position of this man. And even though we experienced the scene through her point of view, and it was something interesting because somehow we have two point of views and one is ours. So I mean, in that case, like, I was like really like I'm always like so grateful that I had to work with such a wonderful actress, because this scene we could only do one take because it's like a very specific hour of day.
Just enough light to get exposure with that
Yes.
blue, right?
And we were shooting without any edit light because I was very much against it, because we shot it twice.
Plus, it feels like she drives like 2 miles, so there's
Yes.
also that. You can't
Yeah,
you can't light 2 miles.
We did two shot twice, like on 2 days. On one day, the cinematographer built this platform, edit all the lights, and I was like so irritated because there was some sort of request from the team that they needed more light to see things better, but that was like unbearable, and I was like unable to accept it because like those are the things which me really, the creature is real for me.
Yep.
But the light that goes with you while you walk, it's something that I just can't watch it, because that's the moment when I'm like, okay, I'm just watching a film. I can't connect. This is not real. Like emotionally, I started to become really like distracted. And we shot the scene, and I was like, I just can't accept this. And I was like, we need to go back to the original idea of shooting it without any light. And then actress, like, she's like wonderful. She was like, so you don't want to see me? I was like,
Why am I here?
I was like, we do see you actually.
What you just described in the way that when you wrote that scene, you just saw it that way and you just thought about it being this first person camera. Was that in general kind of your experience throughout this? Is that when you were writing it, you're seeing it, this is the type of scene where I want that type of first person?
That's how I usually write, and that's a bit of a problem, honestly, because like I usually write a script which has a lot of camera stands here, we look at this, and I even like usually start to be like, I think it's this, because mostly I shoot on one lens. Like my first feature is entirely shot on one lens, but April is shot on one lens other than abortion scene and examination. Like the rest is just one lens. So it's like a very important for me to visually understand how do I experience the film also, because otherwise like writing is a literature unless I really see it as a film. And but it becomes very difficult technically for people to read, obviously, because it's a bit of very technical usually in a way. So then I need to rewrite. So I'm a bit masochistic about the process, I would say, because it's an endless process of rewriting versions for different departments and not departments, but for example, for the financing, it needs to be a regular script, which is like readable. And for actors also, like they don't need to know where is the camera. Even though like the actress, she really wants to know in advance. She goes into the room, says, let me guess like, where it's going to be.
There's things in this film that are very beautiful. I'm not surprised that you're like, I want this time of day. I'm wondering if you talk about that, because it doesn't seem like you're into like artificial light and all these other things, but there's just moments in this film that are extremely beautiful and that seem to go even beyond just where you're shooting. It seems to be a conscious thing on your part. And I'm wondering if you talk about that. I mean, even the poster, that one image, I kept waiting for that image to come up.
Thank you.
And in contrast to some of the spaces in the hospital and sterile, I'm wondering if you talk about when you thought about
the beauty. It's necessary for me to acknowledge that the world we live in is beautiful and the humans are beautiful despite all the flaws and violence, and because like I do recognize, I don't want to be judgmental. Like I really don't want in my films to judge somebody, because I really strongly believe like obviously I have spoken to my grandmother, for example, about this because she has seen many things in these villages also, that like I do believe that there is a possibility to change something through acknowledging also the beauty of that these people carry, like all of them. And in a way, like it's difficult for me to look away and not to see how beautiful the nature is and the landscapes. But on the other hand, because I grew up there and I have seen also many things happening there, I know that nature is just indifferent. It's just there. And it witnesses sometimes the ugliest things. And sometimes it participates, obviously. So it's like, but I still, even my characters in the film, I want them to recognize the beauty of landscapes, of nature and people. But then also the hospital, strangely, it's very sterile, obviously. It's sterile. And I could talk a bit maybe how we were doing the hospital, because usually like I have this, and in Georgia I had a bit of comfort doing this because it's maybe cheaper to do it than here.
You seem to have the luxury of time.
Yes.
And that maybe that also comes with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It's kind of like more like really affordable to do certain things. And because I want to say this because I don't want like younger directors here to feel like, oh, like they can't do something. It's just like maybe it's really expensive. And so the part which is shot in the real hospital, like which I knew this hospital really well since my childhood, it has like another part of the building which is abandoned. So basically, and there is a door like which goes in between. So I asked the municipality to rent this part, to rent it to us, and we matched. We redecorated and we rebuilt everything. So basically, you never know in which part of the hospital you are, but in reality, we built in the interior of the hospital almost entirely. And that gave us the luxury of time, because with the very like dramaturgically important scenes, which are the dialogues which involve actors, and they're very long scenes, and I want actors to have luxury and calmness to really do their best. Like I don't want them to be rushing that we have like 3 hours and we need to get out. But because like it's too much pressure to tell them that it's like a one shot, it's 11 minutes, and we have 3 hours.
Are you talking about your opening shot? Or I think it's well, I should say, I don't know if it's the opening shot, it's the opening scene.
Yeah, the dialogues which happen in the offices also.
Yeah, I meant the office one. I guess it's not the opening scene because
it's the third one.
But the one where she's
Yes. I mean, it's an assembly. These are wonderful actors, and I want them to be able to do their best also.
One take, like.
Yes,
11,
it's like
it's
we
stressful
could
as
only
hell.
do 11 minutes usually. But then I really want actors to know that if we have a day, if we need to spend the entire day on this one scene, we're gonna do it because it's one shot anyway. But I really want it to be for actors, and I really love working with actors. And for me, it's like the most delightful days on set when we're really sitting there, like trying like to act together also, because this assembly is like incredible when they're like together, all of them. And for those scenes we need privacy and we need comfort, but then like I do think that it's still beautiful, these interiors. Like I don't know, like because like, by the way, I was exchanging a bit of a texture on the floor from the real hospital. Like in our part of the hospital we have a different floor, and I was somehow very proud of this achievement because it had some texture, and I was like, people will see this. But I don't think so. Yeah,
I didn't need. I mean, obviously, Nina going to perform the abortions in the village is. I mean, you don't need the background of whatever's going on in your country to realize that this is not something that's she's gonna get in trouble for. But after I saw it and I started reading interviews with you and reading about the circumstances, part of what you saw in your time in the hospital had to do with underage patients, right? And that I wonder if you can explain that, because if my understanding is abortion is legal in your country until 12 weeks, but no one does it. Like it's like you got to find a hospital that will do it. But there's an element here of what you were seeing with underage patients, which is just like a no-no, right?
Well, with underage patients, it's even bigger stigma usually associated, because first of all, those girls, they don't exist statistically, because when you go to the police department and you ask for the statistics of underage marriage, they tell you that they just don't exist. And then I was like, oh yeah, but I know like those girls. They said, oh really, you want to report? Like because then you become like the main witness also, and then you will really like your life will be really like destroyed in a way. And it's kind of like police doesn't want to see this. And then like for doctors it's also like a very difficult thing to deal with, because they clearly know how old the girl is, but they cannot really report it, because if they do, they almost like are unable to practice then like at the hospital anymore, because they'll be going to the like to testify like every day basically like, and that the procedure is going to be just crazy. And this is like something which I started to really see while I was like researching for the film. Also like what's really interesting, and I don't know like if I'll be like, I don't think I'll be able to make a film in Georgia. It's totally not possible at the moment, not only for me, but in general at the moment it's impossible to make films in Georgia because of the censorship and the restrictions.
This film wasn't filmed. I'm sorry. This film wasn't filmed in Georgia?
It was, but it was made in secret. But
It's made
now,
secret.
yeah,
Okay.
like now what's happening right now, it's not possible anymore to film anything in secret, because there is so much surveillance that they will know what you're doing anyway. Actually, it's incredible. I was like fascinating in the cameras that government uses, because they're in the streets and they can read what you do on your phone. Like it's like I don't know how is this possible, but it's really advanced technology. But and the problem is that like police like really followed us around when we were making a film, because they knew that we're doing something, but they didn't know like what this film was about. And then apparently I think we were seeing something which we were not supposed to see. And for me it's also like a very interesting subject for the film to explore, how things you see are not important maybe for you, or you don't pay attention, but they might be of really like importance for others, because police was really concerned that I was seeing something which up until now I don't know what was happening actually in this time when I was there. And underage marriage is something which police uses to somehow like control the families or people who live in these villages, because it's going to be used later always like against them. Because officially, like legally, it's a crime.
There are so many. Let me see if I have this right.
Yeah.
There are so many underage girls having kids, and there are so many underage marriages or partnerships in these villages, but that's all illegal. So
it's illegal.
So essentially, the police, if they know this, they can use this to kind of control.
Yes. So basically, like,
did I say that right? Is that
yes, because like those communities are very tightly knit. So it's basically like almost like one village could be just two families. Like, so basically, like if like a father, for example, the groom, his family, if everybody would be arrested, because then they would need to arrest everyone, right? If they would recognize what's happening. So obviously, like people in the villages also know that police closes eyes on what's happening there, and when necessary, it's always going to be used.
So you can't make a film there again. I'm just going to assume April's not screening and is not going to screen there. But you continue to live there, correct? Is life hard for you? No, you're not. Okay.
I don't live there full time anymore.
Yeah, I don't think they probably are fans of April. I don't think this is probably their jam.
It's interesting because the thing is that like government like immediately disowned the film, and the official announcement was that they really don't know who I am, and but they're happy that this film exists, and they say, we have no idea who she is.
It's easier to act like you don't exist than to
and
go after you.
And then you see like a big part of people that I know decided, and who were involved in the film even, decided to say that it's better if we just agree with this position. And I know that they have a point, and it's true, because like otherwise you would need to engage a fight which would endanger people who do not deserve to be like, part of this like ordeal later on.
Last thing before I let you go. Matthew Herbert and Horsebones.
Yes.
Talk to me about the music in your film.
Well, Matthew Herbert, like first of all, like he already had the album made with the bones of horse bones, like before.
I want to make sure because
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily hear horse bones when I was watching your movie. He made an album with instruments made of horse bones. Do I have that right?
Of
Okay.
one like entire cask. I don't know. It's I don't know. Like he experiments so much with not only instruments, but to test like what is sound and what is music, and what's the relationship between the instrument and the sound that's being made. And like it's like incredibly interesting, like his process and what he's exploring. And then like because I was like had this like, what is the sound of dry breathing and like the deepest breath ever.
So his music is really tied to that breathing and
Yes.
that what we were talking about
Yes,
before
yes,
sound
yes.
to kind of go
Yeah.
together. Okay.
He was like extremely generous and very collaborative, because when he would send me recordings, because we would talk, he would do a recording, then give it to me and be like, use it as you wish. He would never intervene in how I was actually using it. And big part of the music that he wrote is used as a soundscape, because it's part of the sound design, and maybe you don't hear it as music maybe, but it's just there. And like even like the wind, flowers, steps, like it's all everywhere actually through the film.
It's integrated with that breathing
Yes.
and the wind
Yeah.
because there is a little bit more of a wind when we're in the in
Mhm.
the heavy breathing sounds. It's beautiful. It's very the sound. I mean, I love this film, but the sound, it's just even if you just see it, that opening raining scene and just being in
Yeah.
the rain, it just instantly
Yeah.
puts you into space. Well, congratulations on this film. It's beautiful. It's I think people are really going to enjoy it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.